Okay, so we're going to take a look at another question from the 2023 HSC Standard 2 Maths paper. This is question 21. So we're told electricity provider A charges 25 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity plus a fixed monthly charge of $40. Complete the table showing provider A's monthly charges for different levels of electricity. All right, so in the question it tells us how to calculate the monthly charge. So for part A, we know the monthly charge is $40, the fixed fee, plus 0.25 times N, where N is the number of kilowatt hours of electricity you've used. So if the electricity used in the month is 400, we have N is 400. This implies M, the total cost, is 40 plus 0.25 times 400. That's 100 plus 40, that's 140. So therefore the missing number in this box should be 140. Now we are also told that provider B charges 35 cents per kilowatt hour with no fixed monthly charge, and the graph shows how they charge. Part B says on the grid, graph provider A's charges. All right, so we'll produce our own little grid over here. It's going to go from up to 400 on this axis, up to 1000 on this axis. Well, provider B, the graph that we already have, goes up to about 350. So 350 at 1000. We can just read that off the graph. So their line looks something like this. This is about right. Now this is the total charge in dollars, and this is the number of kilowatt hours. So now we need to graph provider A's line, 40 plus 0.25 times N. Well, we have a few points, the points given in the table. So we can go 0, 40 is here, and then we're going to have 1000, and the charge is 290. So 290 is about here, so at 1000 it goes up to 290. So we get something that looks like this. This is just an approximate sketch. So this is provider B, and this is provider A. Now the slopes here are 0.25 and 0.35. You can tell that because provider B charges 35 cents per kilowatt hour. The intercept for B is 0, 0 because there's no fixed monthly payment, whereas the intercept for A is 40 because there's a $40 fixed monthly payment. So this is the answer to question B, or the way that we solve part B. Part C, use the two graphs to determine the number of kilowatt hours per month for which provider A and provider B charge the same amount. Okay, so when we graph this, on the graph I have on the page, we've got to be a little careful of the scale. It's only going to give us an approximate number, but it will be whatever this number of kilowatts is. And they want the number of kilowatts per hour, which provide an equal amount. This is going to be somewhere in the order of about 400. So this is roughly where 400 would be on this axis. And so 400 kilowatts per hour is in fact the correct answer. And if you graphed these perfectly on the grid, you would know, it would be very obvious that this was the point. So the answer to part C is 400 kilowatt hours. And we're just reading that off the graph. And then for part D, we're told a customer uses an average of 800 kilowatt hours. Which provider, A or B, would be cheaper? Well, 800 kilowatt hours is about here. So if we trace these up, one of them is here, one of them is here, you can see provider B will be a little over 300, or around 300. Provider A will be a little bit less than that. And if we use our formulas to calculate our exact numbers, provider B, which we calculated, we called this M. M was 40 plus 0.25 times 800. Well, this is 40 plus 200. This is 240. This is in dollars. And then K, which we might call the cost for provider B, is 0.35 times the number of kilowatt hours, which is 800. This is going to be about 280, exactly 280 in fact. So which provider is cheaper? Well, provider Provider B was the 35 cents per kilowatt hour. Provider A was the first one. So therefore, provider A is cheaper. Provider A is cheaper. And this is the answer. So now let's talk about the marking quickly. For part A, you'll just need to get 140. You just need to get the missing value, put it in the box. For part B, you need to do some working and then get an approximate line. Given that you've been given a nice grid, you should try and rule it with the back of a pen or a ruler or whatever, because it's going to be useful. In part C, you need to get the 400. And then for part D, you get 1 mark for demonstrating some progress towards finding which is cheaper. And then you get a second mark for choosing the correct option with sufficient working. And it's also worth noting, for part D, it says which provider A or B would be cheaper and by how much. We should also state the difference, right? We've sort of written it in the question here, but provider A is cheaper by $40. It's better to note this down very clearly in order to get the mark. So this is how we do question 21.